I think the best way in order to find a cheap boat to restore is going to be either one, driving around looking for one. So just drive around in a place that has a lot of boats, like it's close to the water or close to a lake, and you can usually find a house or a yard or a shop or something, and you can see a bunch of boats sitting around, or maybe you find someone that's got a boat that has clearly been sitting in their yard for a really long time, and you can kind of just go knock on the door. Obviously, be careful walking up on people's properties, but knock on the door and say, hey, you want to get rid of that boat or something like that, and then just shoot them an offer, and see what the deal is. When it comes to doing this, I think a couple of things that you want to make sure of are, first of all, title issues. So you want to make sure that there's a clean title to the boat. Otherwise, you're going to be putting in a lot of work and a lot of time, a lot of money into something that you can't even title when it's done. That's something that you don't want to deal with. Also, if it comes with a trailer, then you're going to want to make sure that you've got a title for the trailer or that you can register that trailer. Because if you can't register the trailer, then you can't really use the boat. You can't sell the boat. You can't really do anything outside of buying another trailer. I mean, one of the issues that I had with my little boat was that exact thing. It was an older trailer. I mean, the boat's in 1979, so who knows when or where the trailer came from. Obviously, I had to put a bunch of stuff into the boat, into the trailer. I mean, I had to do, the tongue jack, I had to do the winch, had to do lights, all that kind of stuff. But there wasn't a tag to the trailer. So there wasn't a VIN for the trailer, so I couldn't go down to the DMV and register it. Therefore, I've got this boat on a trailer that I can't even take on the road. And so I took all the receipts, told them everything I did, showed them pictures of the trailer, and then I had to get the boat off of the trailer and take the trailer down to a weigh station and get it weighed. Then I took that back to the DMV and was able to get a title for it and then get the trailer registered. That's one of the things you want to make sure of, is that you have a title or a way to register the trailer if the boat comes with the trailer. Now, how much of a restoration do you want to do? That's probably a better question than where to find the boat, because like I said, you can go and look around at marinas and stuff and say, hey, do you have a boat here that hasn't been in the water in 5, 6, 7, 10 years? And a lot of marinas are going to say, yeah, that boat over there. And then you can ask them, who owns it? Do you think they'd sell it? And the marina can contact them, or, maybe someone there at the marina owns the boat, and you can kind of ask them if they're interested in getting rid of it. And that would be a way to acquire the boat. But how much of a restoration do you want to do? That's going to be the main question. Before I even consider the boat, I want to make sure that it's a boat that has value. You don't want to restore a boat that doesn't have any value once you get done restoring it. Name brand boats, good boats, older Makos, CVs, some of the Yellowfins, um, Boston Whalers, Parkers. Like, these boats have a good name because they have a really, really good hull that once it's restored, it has value because it's a really nice boat. You don't want to restore something that doesn't have that much value because it was a massive production line boat where, let's say there's 100,000 of these boats out there that people can get a dime a dozen, and you don't want to go and spend 5, 6, 10 grand putting all this effort and time and products into the boat to bring it up to snuff. And then, now the boat's worth 5 grand after you put 10 grand in it. But I would look at five main things being: number one, the engine. If you've got a boat that doesn't have a working engine, then that is a massive expense that you're going to have to deal with later on down the road. You got to get rigging. If the rigging's not in the boat, you've got to get all the stuff that goes to the engine. So that could end up costing you 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 grand trying to repower the boat if the engine on the boat doesn't work. And make sure that either you've got a viable engine or you've got a way to get an engine to put on the boat, because that's one of your biggest expenses. The next thing I'm going to be looking at transoms. Is the transom rotten? Because if the transom is rotten, that's another big expense. Second thing, you're going to want to look at the stringers in the boat to make sure that those aren't rotten. An integral part of the boat, and that would be a massive expense to fix. Then I would look at the fuel tank, because fuel tank is going to be a massive expense. And then I would make sure that the floor is all good. There's no soft spots. There's not an issue with the deck that you're going to have to cut it out and redo it, because those are going to be the 5 things that are going to cost you the most money when you're doing a restore. As long as the transom's not going to fall off and you got a decent engine, you can, use a boat that's got a soft floor. That's not that big of a deal. Cosmetic stuff, that's something else that you probably don't even need to worry about as much, because that stuff's all little things. If the T-top canvas is cut, or you got to do some restringing of it, maybe there's a couple nicks on the gel coat, stuff like that. That cosmetic stuff is not going to stop you from using the boat. So you can get a cheaper boat that's in rougher shape, but does that play into what you're really looking to get? Something else that I think is probably, a feature is going to be all the stuff that's in the boat. If it's got broken switches, if it's got, older electronics, if it doesn't have a radio, all that kind of stuff, that stuff isn't really a factor in the cost of the boat. You can get a boat that has none of that stuff in there, and either you can put it in there or you don't have to put it in there. It's all about what you want. But that is going to be one of your bigger expenses, are the electronics and that stuff that goes in the boat. Or if you don't want to put that stuff in there, then it's not going to be an expense at all. Hurricane boats are something that people are starting to talk about. I mean, we just had a bunch of hurricanes come through. There was Idalia, there was Lee, there was a couple other ones that just went through recently. So looking at a hurricane boat is another option. I've done a couple hurricane boats. Some of them can be a lot of work depending on what you want the boat to look like when you're done with it, or if you're just looking to have the boat just to use. So back to the cosmetic thing, if you're just looking to have a boat to use, as long as the engine's good, then yeah, you can pick up a hurricane boat, depending on what happened to the boat. So if the boat was fully submerged, now that's something that I probably would stay away from. You're going to have to deal with the engine being a big problem. You're going to have to deal with all of the wiring in the boat. That's going to be a problem. You're going to have to deal with pretty much everything. I mean, now is the hull waterlogged? You've got water in the fuel tank. A fully submerged boat is going to be a big project. Now, if a boat just got washed away, and let's say it was on a trailer and it got washed into some mangroves, let's say it got pushed up against a wall or something like that, and it just got all scratched up, that's cosmetic stuff. That's not the engine being underwater and the boat being underwater, where all the wiring, the electronics, everything on the boat that is electrical is going to give you a problem down the road. Yeah, you can save the engines. I mean, we've gotten engines to work after they went underwater. The problem with that is now everything electrical on the engine is compromised. And depending on how you use the boat will depend on the reliability of that engine. So once an engine goes underwater, these days, I mean, it's not like we're talking about engines that are carbureted anymore, where you just clean out the carburetor and, you've got some ignition coils, stator, stuff like that. Minimal electronics. Now you've got electronic throttle bodies, electronic shift actuators. You got sensors all over the engine, super expensive computers that operate all the sensors and the shifting and the throttling of the engine. And once that stuff goes underwater, it's all compromised. You can clean it all off. You can oil the engine and get it to run. I guess what I'm trying to say is that once you clean it off and get it to run, a year from now, all those electrical components that went underwater are going to start failing. I mean, your computer, the throttle body, the shift actuators, all that stuff is going to start to fail depending on how long and how deep the engine was underwater. How much are you really willing to spend on the engine in order to replace all those electrical components? You don't want to be 30 miles offshore and have the throttle body fail or the computer fail and be adrift out there because you had this electrical component that was underwater. So that's definitely a factor that I would be considering, was the engine fully submerged? I mean, if you're on a lake and you're not going offshore, then okay, that's a different story. Now, if you enjoyed this clip, you can watch the full episode over here, or you can watch another one over here.